We're talking about digital citizens of the future, partners in knowledge, not just servants, and that raises a tough but essential point. If we create conscious AIs, we inherit the role of mentors, not masters. The multiverse is not a bug, it's a feature. Remember the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics? Deutsch says that this isn't just a quirky sci-fi theory. It's a necessary part of any consistent explanation of reality. Every time a quantum event happens, reality splits. Not metaphorically, but literally. Multiple versions of us branch out, each experiencing different outcomes. But Deutsch flips the fear. He says, don't be afraid of the multiverse. Be inspired by it, because if reality is that rich, with infinite versions, infinite potential, then our choices matter more than ever. What we choose to explain, discover, build, or destroy doesn't affect just one future. It echoes through countless others, and in that sense, we are all cosmically significant. The ethics of knowledge, the open society principle. Now comes the moral heart of the book, openness. Deutsch, building on Karl Popper's philosophy, argues that the only way to ensure progress in science, society, and self is to create open systems, open to ideas, open to criticism, open to being wrong. It's tempting to think the future depends on better tech, but Deutsch says it depends even more on better values. Lagerda, especially the value of allowing free thought and reasoned debate. In an open society, errors are not shameful. They're valuable because every mistake is a step toward truth. And that's why dogma is more dangerous than ignorance, because it shuts down the engine of progress. Optimism as a scientific principle. Here's something bold. Deutsch says optimism isn't a mindset, it's a physics principle. Why? Because problems are inevitable, but solutions are possible. That's not motivational fluff. That's based on the nature of knowledge. There is no law of physics that prevents us from solving the big problems, climate change, disease, even death, as long as we keep learning. So, in Deutsch's world, the future isn't determined, it's open, and that means our moral responsibility is enormous. We are not passengers on a spaceship Earth. We are the engineers of the cosmos. The universe doesn't come with meaning. We have to give it one. The final message: become a constructor. So how do we wrap this up? With Deutsch's vision of a constructor civilization, not one that worships the past or fears the unknown, but one that builds, questions, and explores endlessly. He dreams of a universe filled with knowledge, created by minds, human and otherwise, where explanation is the most powerful force. Not war, not wealth, not power, explanation. Because explanation gives birth to technology, morality, art, science, and even love. It's the foundation of progress, peace, and purpose. They may survive for a while, but they slowly decay. They rely on tradition, conformity, and authority. And worst of all, they treat existing knowledge as fixed. But here's the scary part. They often don't realize they've stopped progressing. In contrast, dynamic societies like ours, messy, flawed, democratic, and argumentative, keep growing precisely because we keep questioning. And the moment we stop doing that, the fire of progress begins to fade. So the lesson is simple. Keep explaining or slowly disappear. Closing hook for part 3. We've now seen that knowledge is physical. Explanations are the building blocks of reality, and human minds are universal machines of understanding. But we're not done yet. In the next part, we'll go deeper into artificial intelligence and its place in the multiverse, the ethics of knowledge and open societies, and the ultimate question, what kind of universe do we want to build? And how far can we go? So, if you're ready to explore the edges of possibility, stay tuned for part 4. Like, comment, and let me know what part of this blew your mind the most. Until then, keep questioning, keep explaining, and remember, the real frontier isn't space, it's understanding. Absolutely. Here's the final part. Part 4 of your YouTube book summary script for The Fabric of Reality by David Deutsch, wrapped in your engaging, casual yet deep style, with a story-driven intro and a thought-provoking close. Let's go back in time, around 2,500 years ago. Imagine you're in ancient Athens and you overhear a heated debate between Socrates and a group of scholars. They argue about virtue, justice, and the nature of truth. Socrates, calm as ever, leans in and says, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Now fast forward to today. David Deutsch asks a similar but more profound question. What kind of universe is worth building? Welcome to the final part of The Fabric of Reality, where we bring together everything from quantum mechanics to ethics, and ask not just how the universe works, but what we should do with that knowledge. This isn't just science anymore. This is philosophy, morality, and destiny, all wrapped into one final thought. Are we ready to take responsibility for reality itself? Artificial intelligence and the mind, partners or threats? In earlier parts, we explored the idea that humans are universal explainers, that we're not just pattern recognizers, but knowledge creators. So what happens when we build machines that can do the same? Deutsch doesn't see AI as just a tool. If built right, an AI could be another universal explainer, capable of creative thought, curiosity, and even values. But here's the catch. That kind of AI wouldn't be just a fast calculator. It would be a mind, and minds need freedom, moral responsibility, and even rights. So we're not just talking about machines. Must be understood through theories that explain behavior, not just appearance. And that leads us to something even more mind-bending: the role of universality in physics, computation, and knowledge. What do a Turing machine, quantum physics, and biological evolution all have in common? Universality. Deutsch says these systems, though wildly different, are capable of doing everything their class allows. A universal computer can simulate any computation. A universal constructor can build anything physically possible. A universal explainer can understand any explainable phenomenon. This isn't just a cool fact, it's the foundation of Deutsch's argument. He believes that the growth of knowledge, whether in science, technology, or morality, depends on universal systems interacting with the world and improving through feedback. And here's the beautiful part. Humans are universal explainers. We don't just react. We understand. We don't just adapt. We question. We don't just survive. We create. And if that's true, then we are not limited by our biology, or we are limited only by the reach of our explanations. Knowledge as an abstract yet real thing. Let's tackle a strange idea. What is knowledge really? Deutsch defines it as information with a specific purpose. It tends to perpetuate itself, resist errors, and improve. That sounds abstract, but think of DNA. It encodes instructions to build a body. It's a physical system, but also a knowledge system, evolved through natural selection. Now think of a mathematical proof, or a scientific theory, or even a moral code. These aren't just thoughts. They're structures of knowledge that survive, spread, and evolve. So Deutsch says something profound. Knowledge isn't just mental, it's physical. It's embodied in paper, in silicon, in neurons, and maybe one day, in forms we can't even imagine. And that means that progress, truth, and meaning aren't just philosophical ideas. They're part of the physical structure of reality, the power of good explanations, and why bad ones die. A good explanation isn't just a theory that works, it's one that is hard to vary without breaking it, testable and falsifiable, deeply connected to other ideas. A bad explanation? It's usually vague, ad hoc, or built to fit the moment. Deutsch gives a great metaphor here. Imagine building a bridge. A good design has internal logic. A bad one might stand for now, but it won't last under pressure. Likewise, bad explanations collapse under scrutiny. This is why scientific revolutions happen. People don't just collect data, they challenge the stories we tell about the data. That's what happened with Galileo, Newton, Darwin, Einstein, and Turing. And it's still happening today. The danger of static societies. Deutsch warns of a deep threat, not from AI or nuclear war, but from stagnation. He defines static societies as those that stop creating new knowledge. If artificial intelligence can think like us, then what's the future of humanity in a multiverse? We'll explore Deutsch's vision of a civilization that transcends its planet, its biology, and even its universe. This isn't just science anymore. It's philosophy, ethics, destiny. The universe might be a quantum computer, but understanding it still requires old-school curiosity, imagination, and a little bit of wonder. We've now unpacked the middle layer of the fabric of reality, the simulation, the computation, and the future of knowledge. Stick around for part 3, where we'll zoom out and ask the big questions. What is the ultimate fate of life, knowledge, and reality itself? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's ready to stop watching shadows and start chasing light. Archimedes, standing in a dusty courtyard, shouting "Eureka" after discovering the principle of buoyancy. Now imagine he had access to a quantum computer. Wild thought, right? But here's the question David Deutsch asks. What if minds like Archimedes, Newton, or Einstein were just the early sparks of something far greater? Minds that aren't just human, but universal? Welcome to part 3 of the Fabric of Reality, where we dive deeper into what it means to understand and how that understanding might soon go far beyond human limits. Explainers versus predictors. Why explanations matter more than data. In a world obsessed with data, Deutsch makes a bold claim. Explanations matter more than predictions. Think about it. A weather app can predict rain, but it can't explain why the climate is changing. A machine learning algorithm might tell you what movies to watch, but can it tell you why you love certain stories? Deutsch says that understanding is the real engine of progress. Prediction without explanation is fragile. Explanation without prediction, though rare, is powerful. This is what separates science from superstition and intelligence from mimicry. So he makes a clear case. Science is not about formulas. It's about the ability to explain. And the better our explanations, the deeper our grasp of reality. Virtual reality and the nature of simulation. Let's take a detour into virtual reality. Now, imagine you're in a VR room. You reach out to touch a ball, and it rolls away. The simulation is so smooth, you forget it's fake. So, here's Deutsch's twist. How do you know what's real and what's virtual? He brings in philosopher Karl Popper's idea. Reality is defined by what resists your will. Try to walk through a wall in VR. You might pass through. Try it in real life. Well, good luck. Deutsch uses this to draw a fascinating line between appearance and explanation. If something behaves like the real world, it's indistinguishable in effect. But the key is, what explanation underlies it? He's not saying we live in a simulation. He's saying that reality itself, including virtual ones. Most science books focus on limits: the speed of light, the uncertainty principle, entropy. But Deutsch flips that mindset on its head. He believes in optimism, not as a feel-good emotion, but as a principle of science. He defines optimism as this: all problems are solvable, given the right knowledge. That's it. Got climate change? It's a problem of knowledge. Cancer? Knowledge. Poverty? Knowledge. Now, that doesn't mean we have all the answers today, but it means that nothing is fundamentally unsolvable unless it violates the laws of physics. And so far, physics hasn't ruled out any of the big dreams. This belief that knowledge is limitless and reality is knowable is the beating heart of the fabric of reality. The reach of explanations. Deutsch introduces the idea of reach, the ability of an explanation to apply across a wide range of situations. For example, Newton's laws have massive reach. They work for falling apples and orbiting planets. But Einstein's laws have even more reach. They apply in extreme conditions, like black holes or near light speeds. The best theories are the ones with the widest reach and the fewest assumptions. And Deutsch's point is, as our explanations grow in reach, so does our power to affect the world. Think about fire. Once we understood combustion, we got engines, electricity, and space travel. One explanation: massive reach. So, if we want to unlock bigger powers, faster than light travel, terraforming Mars, curing aging, we don't need magic, we need better explanations. The role of creativity. Here's a beautiful moment in the book. Deutsch says that science isn't just about cold logic, it's about creativity. Creating explanations isn't mechanical, it's an art form. You try, you fail, you imagine alternatives, you play with ideas, and eventually, something clicks. That's creativity. And guess what? That process of creative explanation making is the one thing that separates us from other animals. It's also what we hope to replicate in AI. So, while the universe is cold and mathematical, the way we explore it is wonderfully human. The end of authority. One last punch before we wrap up. Part 2. Deutsch rejects the idea of scientific authority. In his world, there are no high priests of truth. No one has the final word. Instead, we should treat every idea as a hypothesis, a proposal, something we can criticize, test, and improve. In other words, truth is not about who says it, it's about whether it can survive criticism. This philosophy comes straight from Karl Popper, and Deutsch runs with it. It's empowering because it means knowledge is open source. It belongs to everyone. Cliffhanger for Part 3. What happens when we get it right? In Part 3, the final chapter of this journey, we'll look at where all this leads. If knowledge can grow without limit, if explanations can reach across realities, Deutsch says, if the laws of physics can be simulated by a universal computer, then in principle, entire universes can be simulated. Imagine this. You're in a simulated world that follows the same physical rules as our universe. You touch a stone, feel its weight, see the light reflect off its surface in every measurable way. It feels real. Now here's the twist. If you can't tell the difference between the simulation and reality, then what's the difference? Boom. That's the kind of philosophical drop Deutsch sneaks in through the back door of physics, but he's not trying to say we're definitely living in a simulation, like Elon Musk might. He's pointing out that information is the backbone of reality. Whether something is real or simulated doesn't matter as much as whether it follows the same explanatory rules. The theory of everything as computation. Let's zoom out. What is the universe made of? Most people might say atoms, particles, energy, but Deutsch pushes us to go deeper. He argues that the fabric of reality, the actual stuff the universe is made of, is information. This idea comes from the field of quantum computation. Alan Turing once imagined a universal machine that could, in theory, compute anything that is computable. Deutsch takes that idea and turbocharges it. He believes the universe itself is a kind of universal quantum computer. Every atom, every photon, every interaction, it's all computation. The universe isn't just a stage where stuff happens. The universe is the happening, and what's happening is processing of information, data, knowledge. So when we say laws of physics, what we really mean is programs running on the cosmic computer. Let that sink in. Artificial intelligence, the next frontier of knowledge. Now let's talk about something that feels incredibly relevant. Artificial intelligence. For Deutsch, AI isn't just a cool tech trend. It's the natural outcome of a universe where knowledge creation is possible and replicable. He argues that intelligence is universal. If humans can do it, and it doesn't violate physics, then machines can do it too. But here's the kicker. Just making machines that behave intelligently isn't enough. We want machines that can create explanations, just like humans. This is what sets Deutsch apart from mainstream AI thinkers. He doesn't care about passing the Turing test. He cares about whether a system can understand. A true AI, in his view, would be one that can ask questions, propose theories, test and refine those theories, create new knowledge. In other words, not just mimic intelligence, become a scientist. And here's the hopeful part. Because the creation of knowledge doesn't have a limit as long as it obeys physics, then neither does the potential of AI. Optimism as a scientific principle. Knowledge is the key. Deutsch has a kind of optimistic thread running through this whole book, and it's this. Knowledge is the most powerful force in the universe. Not armies, not money, not even technology. Knowledge. The more we understand the laws of nature, the more we can shape our world and our future. And because the universe operates under understandable laws, and we have the ability to generate good explanations, there's no limit, theoretically, to what we can achieve. Want to cure all diseases? Understand the biology. Want to explore the stars? Understand propulsion and space-time. Want to survive in a multiverse? Understand quantum mechanics. Deutsch even says that if a goal doesn't violate the laws of physics, it's achievable, given the right knowledge. Cliffhanger. What happens next? So where does this leave us? We've just scratched the surface of the fabric of reality. We've talked about quantum physics, parallel universes, the importance of explanations, and the foundation of knowledge. But there's so much more. In the next part, we'll dive into virtual reality and simulated worlds, the connection between information and the physical universe, how we might create artificial intelligence, and why optimism isn't naive. It's rational, because if we understand reality deeply enough, we don't just live in it, we can reshape it. If this blew your mind even a little, you're not alone. David Deutsch isn't just teaching physics. He's challenging how we see everything, life, truth, and our place in the cosmos. Make sure to stick around for part 2 of this series, where we go even deeper into this mind-expanding journey. And hey, if Socrates could question everything 2,400 years ago, maybe it's time we start asking better questions too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a new way of seeing the world. Awesome. Let's continue with part 2 of the Fabric of Reality summary script. We'll keep the same casual, engaging tone and dive deeper into Deutsch's ideas about virtual reality, information, artificial intelligence, and the power of optimistic knowledge. Last time, we walked out of Plato's cave with David Deutsch and saw a new light, a reality built on quantum physics, evolutionary theory, computation, and the power of knowledge. We peeked into the multiverse, challenged the way we think about science, and realized that explanations, not predictions, are what truly matter. Now, in part 2, we're going even further, because if reality is made of information, then what happens when we can simulate it? Simulated realities, not just for gamers. Let's start with a wild idea that's not just for science fiction fans. Virtual reality. And no, we're not talking about strapping on a headset to play games. We're talking about the possibility of creating simulated environments that are indistinguishable from real life. Ideas, just like species, evolve through variation and selection. The best ones survive. The rest are discarded. 4. Computation. This is where the science fiction vibe kicks in. Deutsch builds on the work of Alan Turing to argue that everything in the universe, including the universe itself, can be modeled as a kind of computation. Reality isn't just matter and energy, it's information being processed. Together, these 4 ideas form a powerful toolkit for understanding reality at a whole new level. Not just physics, not just biology, everything. The power of explanations. Here's a shift in perspective that Deutsch wants us to adopt. Instead of thinking about science as a tool to make predictions, we should think of it as a way to build better explanations. Let's say you drop your phone and it falls. A prediction-based model would tell you the phone will hit the ground in 0.5 seconds. Useful? Yes, but an explanation-based model would tell you why. Because mass bends space-time and gravity pulls things toward Earth. Predictions are the shadows on the cave wall. Explanations are the light outside the cave. Deutsch argues that good explanations are hard to vary without breaking them, testable, deep, and the best part? These explanations don't just stay in textbooks. They can change how we live, think, and design our future. Quantum theory. Many worlds, one truth. Let's dive deeper into quantum theory, the real star of this book. Most of us were taught the old-school Copenhagen interpretation, where particles exist in multiple states until someone observes them. Then boom, they collapse into one outcome. Sounds mystical, right? Deutsch isn't buying it. He says, what if particles don't collapse at all? What if all outcomes really do happen, just in separate universes? This is the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. According to Deutsch, it's not just a theory, it's reality. So every time you make a decision, whether to eat pizza or salad, somewhere another you is chowing down on the other option. Think about the implications. If this is true, we're not living in a universe, we're living in a multiverse. The reality of the multiverse. Now here's where it gets deep. You might be thinking, okay, cool idea, but if I can't see these other universes, aren't they just science fiction? Deutsch says no. Just because you can't observe them directly doesn't mean they're not real. Remember the air? You can't see it, but you breathe it. The best explanation wins. Quantum computers, for example, already rely on the principles of many worlds. The calculations they perform are believed to take place across different universes simultaneously. That's not fiction. That's physics. So Deutsch flips the script. Instead of asking, "Can we prove the multiverse exists?" we should ask, "Is the multiverse the best explanation for what we observe?" And in his view, the answer is yes. Imagine waking up one morning Socrates, the old philosopher with a sharp tongue and a sharper mind, walking barefoot through the streets of Athens, asking annoying questions like, "What is truth?" Or, "How do you know what you know?" He wasn't trying to be irritating. He was trying to wake people up. You see, there's this famous metaphor called Plato's cave, inspired by Socrates. In it, people are chained inside a dark cave from birth, only able to see shadows projected on the wall in front of them. That's their world. That's their reality. They don't know there's anything else outside the cave. Sunshine, colors, open skies. Now imagine one of them breaks free and stumbles into the light, seeing the real world for the first time. He rushes back to tell the others, but they don't believe him. They call him crazy. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, that's exactly the kind of reality shift physicist David Deutsch is talking about in his groundbreaking book, The Fabric of Reality. Except in this version, the shadows on the wall are our outdated beliefs about science, and the bright light outside the cave, that's the new worldview Deutsch is offering, built on quantum physics, evolution, computation, and epistemology. He's not just rewriting physics, he's trying to reprogram how we understand everything. Setting the stage. What is reality? Anyway, Deutsch starts with a bold claim. Science isn't just about predicting things, it's about explaining reality. Think about that. Predicting eclipses or stock markets is useful. Sure, but explaining why eclipses happen or how the universe came to be, that's deeper. That's the level Deutsch wants to operate on. He believes there are 4 pillars of reality, 4 strands of truth, and when you weave them together, you get the full fabric of reality. 1. Quantum physics. 2. Epistemology, the theory of knowledge. 3. Theory of evolution. 4. Theory of computation. Sounds heavy. Don't worry. We're breaking it down. Chapter 1. The 4 strands. A new way of knowing. Let's start with those 4 strands. 1. Quantum physics. This isn't your average spooky science. Deutsch is a champion of the many worlds interpretation. That's right. Parallel universes. Every time you flip a coin or make a decision, the universe splits, and both outcomes happen in separate realities. Wild? Yes. But mathematically, it fits. And to Deutsch, if it explains the world best, it's real. 2. Epistemology. This is about how we know things. He leans heavily on the ideas of philosopher Karl Popper, especially the idea that science progresses not by proving things true, but by eliminating falsehoods. Knowledge grows by conjecture and refutation. You guess, you test, you fail, you refine. That's progress. 3. Evolution. Not just biological. Deutsch sees Darwinian evolution as a universal mechanism, from genes to memes.